Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Jeff Poole.
And I'm Joe Lallo.
And we've got a great guest for you this week, Will Turnage, founder of Book Barbarian, who a lot of you sci-fi and fantasy folks will be familiar with. It's a promo site, but let me tell you a little about Will before we jump into that stuff. He's the founder of 3 discount book promotion sites, including Book Barbarian, Red Roses Romance, which covers romance and erotica, and Book Adrenaline, which covers mysteries and thrillers. He's also the author of 2 sci-fi thrillers, Extermination Day and Nanoswarm, and 1 paranormal fantasy, Rise of the Jinn. He was born in Ashland, Virginia, studied psychology and economics at the College of William and Mary, and received an MBA from the University of Richmond. He has worked in various fields, including advertising, software, and finance. But in 2008, at the height of the financial crisis, he left a high-stress job in investment banking, sold his possessions, and moved to an exotic foreign country to be with the woman he loves. He currently lives in the sun-baked Caribbean port city of Cartagena, and I'm probably mangling that, Colombia, with his beautiful wife and 2 children. Hi, Will. Did I mangle it? I didn't take any Spanish. So.
No, that's fine.
All right.
No, it's fine.
That's it.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. We're glad to have you. I had no idea you were in a distant land. I've submitted my book several times there and been familiar with the site. But we usually ask folks how they got into writing and publishing, but I'm kind of curious what made you move to Colombia.
Well, back in 2008, my wife, her visa had expired in the U.S. And so we looked at, possibly staying there, moving to another country. And since she's Colombian, she's from Colombia, so we decided to move down here. And the timing was good for me because I was out of work. I'd been working in investment banking, dealing with municipal bond financing. And at the height of the financial crisis, along with thousands of other people, I was out of work. So I said, why not? Let's just move to Colombia. So we sold all of our possessions, everything, and moved down here. It's been a great experience. We live in Cartagena. It's on the coast. We're right near the beach, near the historic old city. It's just a nice vibe, a nice atmosphere down here.
Hey, anybody who's actually watched the movie *Romancing the Stone* pretty much knows where Cartagena is, because that featured in the movie there. But let me ask you: when you decided to move to Colombia, did you already speak Spanish?
I did not. So it was I kind of just jumped right in. It was a situation where I spoke almost no Spanish. And I let's just go for it, and so that's what I did. So I can speak it now, but I'm not completely fluent. But I can generally get by on a conversation.
Yeah, I took 4 years of Spanish in high school, so I can listen to a conversation. I can usually follow along, but you put me next to a fluent speaker, right over the head. But I have a feeling if I were to be exposed to it for that extended period of time, I'm sure I could get up to speed. But so aside from the languages and being the problem there, have you noticed any other challenge in trying to write or publish a novel in Colombia versus living in the U.S.?
Well, it's basically all you need is a laptop to write a novel, or a pen and paper if you want to go old school. So from that perspective, it hasn't been difficult. In terms of running a business, setting up a business, I incorporated everything in the U.S. I still have a bank account in the U.S., credit cards in the U.S. So that was fairly easy, but I think if I had to start a company in Colombia and not have all that set up already, it would have been difficult. It would have been very difficult. The creative aspect, it's a very vibrant city. I'm exposed to people from all over the world. I've got friends from Europe, from Colombia, and it's a very rich environment in terms of creativity. So that's great for writing. There are some infrastructure challenges running an internet-based business. There are power outages here. The internet is not always fast, so you tend to have to work around a lot of that. I find the times when the internet is speedy, and try to work during those times. And then I outsource a lot of stuff too. I've got programmers that I work with in in Romania, and I've got some people in the Philippines I work with, so that's helpful.
I always see every now and then a thread will come up on Kboards with the author talking about moving to another country to save money, you know, because if you're making maybe 1,000 or 2,000 a month from your self-publishing, that might be hard to make a living in the US, but there are, of course, countries where that's possible. Is it cheaper there? Have you found that you're saving a lot of money by having moved?
Well, I do, yeah. It is much cheaper to live here than in the US, that's for sure. Although Cartagena is a little bit different in that it's a tourist city, and the real estate prices and some of the other cost of living expenses have really gone up here over the last 10 years or so. Most people in the US don't know much about Colombia. They think it's a very dangerous place to live. For the last decade or so, it's become a really a nice place. The crime has gone down significantly. The current president recently signed a peace treaty with a guerrilla group that they had been at war with for the last 30 years. As a result of that, it's a very stable economy. There's a lot of foreign investment coming in. And as a result of that, prices have increased here. So it used to be a very inexpensive place to live. Now, not so much.
And I imagine you're still paying all your usual US taxes and everything since it sounds like you're still a citizen and incorporated there.
I do. I pay all my US taxes, and even though I don't want to, because I haven't lived there for so long. But yeah, I kept everything US based, and it's just much easier that way.
All right. Well, that's probably good if you're dealing predominantly with US customers, and although I'm sure you get folks from all over the world applying for your sponsorships. Did you start the site before you wrote your novels, or did you write your novels and then kind of see a need for a different, you know, maybe a genre-focused promotion site?
I wrote my novels first, and I was looking at ways I could market my novels. And at the time, this was about 3 years ago, there were a lot of sites out there, and I tried just about all of them. And I really couldn't find one that was niche based. That would be focused just on science fiction and fantasy for my novels. So I decided to start a site. I just felt like I had been doing affiliate marketing for a number of years down here and had some success with that. And a lot of those skills would translate into creating a new site. That's another reason I thought I could do a little bit better job there. And that's kind of how I got into it.
One of the nice things for those who haven't been to the site before is you actually have more categories, like subcategories of sci-fi and fantasy that people can apply to. Was that just something that you've kind of grown over time, or were you, like as an author yourself, frustrated that there weren't more subcategories of like fantasy or sci-fi when you applied?
Yeah, I was a little bit frustrated. You know, the other sites, the focus is more on niches, multiple categories. I feel that you're at a little bit of a disadvantage there. I think that the more you can focus your books on a niche audience, and certainly subcategories fits into that. The more subcategories that you can have and drill down further, the better you can focus your audience.
All right, one question I like asking a lot of our guests on the show is, now that you're an experienced writer, is there any advice you wish you could go back and give yourself when you were just starting out?
Well, I think there's a couple different things there. First is probably the creative and writing aspect. I remember when I first wrote my book, I had so many ideas going around in my head, and I just wanted to get it out on paper. I think my writing probably got a little bit away from me, so to speak. I would tell myself to probably stay a little bit more focused, focused on a specific niche, on a specific audience, as opposed to just writing whatever comes to mind. So that's one side of it, and the other side is the marketing. I remember looking at all the courses out there, all the different ways to market your books, the different recommendations that people had. You know, start a Twitter account. You should tweet once, twice a day, every hour. You need a Facebook page. You need a blog. You need Pinterest page. You need all these other things, and it's easy to get distracted. I think you need to probably focus on just one or two different marketing avenues. If you like tweeting already, focus just on tweeting about your books and about writing, or about the topic that you're writing in. Those two things would probably be something I would tell myself in the past.
All right, we're going to jump into some questions kind of for listeners who may be wondering, you've got an interesting perspective. That's why I wanted you to have you on here. Is like you see,
Sure.
I'm sure like 100 books a day, probably people are applying, and kind of see what's working best. I am curious, before we jump into that, I didn't tell you I was going to ask this question, so apologies, but it just came up on a Facebook group. Somebody was saying, yeah, I heard all these promo sites are getting like their clickers from China or something now. Can you tell us like how you have built your subscriber base and how you go about finding readers that are interested in the emails you send out?
Well, I've tried a lot of different advertising options. I spend a significant amount on advertising each month. I run Facebook ads, Google AdWords. I've done some niche site advertising on specific book sites. bestfantasybooks.com, bestsciencefictionbooks.com. I've advertised in other newsletters, all specific to science fiction and fantasy. Also, I've targeted AdWords to specific niche sites, IO9, different sci-fi fantasy blogs. I try to stay very focused on advertising just to science fiction and fantasy readers, and that's how I'll be able to build the list up. I tend to see very high click-through rates, very high returns for folks that are investing their money with us on promotions.
Awesome. And, I guess I should have asked you this up front. It sounds like we have a couple people in the chat who would like to know what exactly Book Barbarian is. I've used it before, so I knew, but maybe you can explain. And your other sites, too. We get some non-sci-fi and fantasy people listening, too.
Sure. Book Barbarian, we're a newsletter. We send out a daily newsletter with science fiction and fantasy books on discount. Typically, the discounts are free giveaways, 99-cent promotions. You could run your promotions through KDP or just a regular discount on your books. And that email goes out to over 30,000 subscribers that specifically want to see discounted books in the science fiction and fantasy category.
All right, sounds good. And for somebody who's going to be maybe submitting to the first time, are there any best practices or anything they need to know?
Well, we have all the requirements listed on our website. Generally, the book needs to have at least 10 reviews with an average positive rating, or better. We like to see deep discounts. Regular price $3.99, $4.99. We'd like to see it at least 99 cents or a free giveaway. We only have we like to see just the first in the series of books, not the second, because we can't assume that our readers have read the first book already. So the first, read the first book, so they would purchase the second. Well, those are the basic requirements, and we have more details listed on the website for folks that are familiar with it.
All right, that kind of has a nice little segue into my next question. There's for those that aren't familiar with it or its sister sites, what are some specifics you look for which could fast track your title into being accepted?
Well, the cover is a major selling point. My recommendation is don't do the cover yourself. Don't hire somebody from Fiverr to do the cover for you. Hire a professional designer to do the cover. That's the first thing that people see. Important aspect as far as promoting your book goes. Number of reviews. Make sure you have at least 10 reviews. And then the synopsis. I see a lot of really that are just descriptions of the book. I think if you can tell a short story in the synopsis, that's a much better selling point. So really, those three things is what we look for.
Alrighty, and of course, then I got to do a flip that around. And what are some things that you've noticed which would make you turn down a book from being accepting a book from being submitted?
The sites, the three sites that I own are all genre specific. So if for example somebody puts in a romance novel to the science fiction and fantasy site, Book Barbarian, down. And the same goes for the other sites. Just make sure it fits into that genre that each site is focused on. I go back to that again. Yeah, the cover has to look professional. It looks professional and looks like it fits into the genre as well.
Alrighty. I have actually a viewer question for you from a lady by the name of Sue. She says, what is the subscriber percent split between fantasy and sci-fi?
It's about 50-50, although it tends to fluctuate a little bit more towards fantasy, just because that's a bigger market right now. But I try to keep it advertising in both genres equal, so that the list stays equal. But it does tend to move a little bit more towards fantasy than sci-fi.
Okay, so if you're looking to plan a promotion through Book Barbarian or any of the other sites, how far ahead of the intended promo date should you be looking into getting the promo?
I would plan 2 months ahead of time. The sites are Book Barbarian is very popular, and that's booking up 2 months in advance now. We added an additional slot a month ago to make it 6 books instead of 5 in each email promotion. And that freed up some spots, but we're still booking up generally 2 months in advance. And sometimes there'll be a spot that shows up due to a cancellation, but generally it's 2 months.
And for people who haven't used it, is it generally obvious how far ahead the thing is booked out? Like, can you sort of see when the openings are?
Yeah, their calendar's up there. I let people book the sites, book their dates themselves. So the calendars are up there. You can see which dates are filled, which dates are open, and adjust it based on that.
You mentioned that you kind of had an affiliate marketing background before getting into this. Is that something, have you been able to use affiliate links to see which books actually sell, or does Amazon allow that with the newsletter?
Well, they did. They did. As you probably know, following the news last year, a lot of sites had their affiliate accounts shut down. And unfortunately, I was in that group as well at the end of last year. It was really unfortunate. It was November of last year, I think, that happened. And I was able to track it, all the sales very specifically before that time. And I went back and forth with the customer service reps there, and as to why they would shut my account down. Technicality to start with, which is I didn't keep my email address up to date, which doesn't seem like a reason to shut down somebody's account. But when I worked my way up the management chain, they eventually just said that they don't want to do business with book promotion sites. And so at that point, there was really no other recourse. This time, there's no affiliate links company on the website. However, I do allow free book of the day promotions to use their own affiliate codes. So that's a way to share revenue with our advertisers.
Yeah, that's too bad. I feel like I've heard that some people might have found ways to work around it or got special, I don't know, deals with Amazon. But and then I've heard authors sending the links to their own site and then having people click through to Amazon. But of course, that adds an extra step for people to possibly decide not to buy. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
it's not
there's all
big.
kind of tricks.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know it's not big
there's all
money,
kind of
but
tricks you can do.
it's nice to know which books actually sell. So
Yeah, it would be. There's you can track the clicks, and I've got historic data where I can look at the clicks and sales for historic data and kind of extrapolate what it would be now. But it would be nice to have that specific information I can look at on my Amazon page. But oh well.
definitely, yeah. Well, when I get in with Amazon, I'll let them know that you'd like to make a deal with
Please.
them.
That would be helpful.
All right, but I am curious, since you track the data, are there any trends you've seen as far as like maybe what kinds of covers are more popular and more likely to get people to click in sci-fi and fantasy?
Well, paranormal fantasy is always popular. That tends to do very well, as do box sets. Box sets are popular, and that can be the first in a series multi-author box set priced at 99 cents. Those do extremely well. Also, epic fantasy, and in science fiction, I was looking at the trends from this past month, and military science fiction was doing well, which is a little bit surprising. That's not a generally a popular category, but for this month, we had a number of popular authors advertising, and their books, I think, kind of pushed that average up. So those are kind of the trends that I see right now.
I don't know if you look
Yeah.
this closely, but do you have any thoughts on like within a genre? If like, we had Michael Cooper on, he's got the book on Facebook ads, and he's like, spaceship ass is what people click most on Facebook, like the back end of the spaceship, something really great about that. Do you know if like maybe spaceships, we kind of joke too on here that dragons always sell, or at least they're gorgeous, so they get clicks. Have you seen anything like that?
The spaceship battle in over a planet that tends to do well. I personally like those type of books. So that's those tend to do well. If in sci-fi, if it's more of an old school look where they had professional artists design the covers back in the day of Arthur C. Clarke, some of his books, and some of the Asimov and some of the other popular authors. If you can manage to get a look like that for your cover, plus. Things like silhouettes tend to not do as well. In paranormal or in fantasy, like you say, dragons are always popular. There's a lot of dragon books that come through. And the epic fantasy covers are always popular. And I like those as well.
Okay, so your free book of the day promotion seems to be a great way to get people interested in your books and make a few bucks using those affiliate links. Could you walk us through what types of books you're looking for to be used in this promotion? Do some genres of books seem to outperform others?
Paranormal fantasy tends to do very well. And then books that are box set books. Those do well across all categories. And we also, in that category, in the free book of the day, we'll take permafrees. A lot of sites don't do that, but the perma-free books, we accept those in that category. But yeah, the general trends that apply to the other categories will apply to the free book of the day promotion as well.
Alrighty, and I do have a question from you for one of our viewers. This is from Monty Montgomery. He's asking, apparently he has asked about post-apocalypse subcategories. He finds it so hard to place his books. Does Will have any recommendations for marketing post-apocalypse?
Is he thinking about as far as promotion sites go, or Facebook ads, or something along those lines? Is he talking about this?
I can only assume he's like, if he wants to try and, for instance, maybe use your services on one of your sites there, how would he go about trying to do that?
Well, we would generally we would take a look at that, and provided it meets all of our other criteria, that would be a book that we would be interested in. I like to try to mix it up in each newsletter. I don't want all the same types of books. I would like to see a post-apocalyptic mixed in with a space opera with a lot of variety in there. I think our readers like to see that type of variety. So in that case, submit, and we'll certainly take a look at it.
All right. Now, earlier you were talking about how box sets do well, and box sets tend to have a higher starting price, and therefore once they get knocked down to your 99 cents or free, that's more of a discount. Do you think that the size of the discount makes a big difference in terms of how well something performs on one of your promo sites?
Well, in our newsletter, the subscribers will see the previous price on there. So they do tend to be price sensitive. The larger discounts will do better. Even if a book is on sale for $2.99, those tend not to do as well $1.99 or $99. The combination that we see that works really well is used in the double feature that we have, where you can price the first book free, for example, and then the second one on sale for either $99 or $1.99. And actually $1.99, the number of sales compared to $99 is relatively the same. So you would get so you can go on and advertise the second book for $1.99 and still get a nice return on your investment.
That's interesting because $1.99, like as a standard price, $1.99 is sort of like the Death Valley. But as seeing it as a part of a two-part promo, it's interesting how that can have a really positive impact. So let's say that you have a book that's $2.99 normally. It seems like for the best results on your site, you'd want to knock that all the way down to free, just because the basically the $2 off isn't going to be as big of an impact.
Well, it depends on what your goals are. If your goals are to get readers, if you have a series of books and your goal is to get additional readers, you want to price the first one at $0 and get anywhere from 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 downloads, and then have those folks moving on to the second and third and fourth books in the series. If you just have one book and it's standalone, then you would probably want to go on and price that at $99 or $1.99. In which case you would have a higher return on your investment then.
Based on what you're kind of hearing, probably you get some feedback from authors. Do you feel that they should maybe wait till they have 3, 4 books out in the series before they try an advertisement, or will you guys work with authors that are maybe launching a new book at 99 cents for the first week?
I like to see new launches. A lot of sites will turn those books away, but I like to get those first. I think our readers like to see new books that are out. They get excited about new authors. Everything looks good if the cover looks good, if the synopsis sounds exciting, and if it's a book that I personally would like to read, then I'll go on and put it on the site, even though it may not have the required reviews just yet in an initial launch. But I do like to see authors that have had some previous books out, the number of reviews at least 50 reviews on a previously published book. Yeah, I certainly would like to see some of the newer books out there.
Yeah, I love it when I can actually get some promo sites booked for a new launch. It's kind of hard for me because usually I'm waiting for the cover until the last minute. So when it's like a 2-month lead, it's hard to get everything together in time. But when I've managed to do it, it's worked well. And just for other authors out there, like sometimes you can have the Goodreads page up, even if you don't want to do a pre-order on Amazon. And I think I may have done that with you guys once. Said like, here's what it's going to look like. Here's the blurb and the stuff on Goodreads, even though I didn't want to dilute the launch by having it up for 2 months on pre-order there.
Right. Yeah, that's fine. We do that all the time. For established authors that have a number of books out there, you can send us the information and just put a placeholder for the cover and just a note on there, or send me an email that says, "Hey, we've got this. I've got this new book coming out. I want to hold a spot now," and that's fine. Yeah, I always try to work with authors. I don't want to be a site that turns a lot of people away. I want to make authors succeed.
And it's great when you can get a couple of other sites besides your own newsletter promoting a new launch, especially on
Right.
Amazon. They kind of say it seems to be that if you want to have steady sales for like that first week or two, rather than just everything in one day, they seem to knock that down pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would recommend stacking promotions, and by that I mean using a number of book promotion sites, and there are a lot of great ones out there. I think if you go with the top 10, I mean a basic marketing plan would be to go with the top 10 book promotion sites for a book launch, and you would reach. You have to make sure they have an email list. That's the primary criteria for selecting a book promotion site. You make sure they have an email list, and ideally they publish the number of subscribers in your specific category. And I've done this for my books too. So if you go out and you put together that plan and hit those top 10 sites, you're going to have access to over 300,000. Not everybody's going to go out and read your book, but you'll have access to those people and potentially get, if it's a free promotion, you'll have tens of thousands of downloads from that promotion. And you can go from there. If it's a new book out, if it's a new series that you plan on launching, you can see just from running that promotion on 10 of the book promotion sites, whether that, then you can decide whether you want to write a second, third, fourth book in the series, and just go from there.
Alrighty. So with regards to the different genres, I know your sites do sci-fi, fantasy, romance, erotica, thrillers, mysteries. Are those the only genres you'll accept for your service? I mean, if you had, say, a strong action novel, yet it has some sci-fi flair to it, would you still consider it?
I would. It has to have a strong, like you said, it has to have a strong sci-fi flair. If it's a romance novel that somebody wants to try to Book Barbarian, and it's just got maybe a little bit of fantasy in it, then I'll tell that author or the publisher to head on over to Red Rose's Romance. That would be a better fit for them. And to me, it doesn't make sense for somebody to try to push that book to an audience that it's really not designed for. Nobody wins in that situation.
Yeah, but you realize that wouldn't stop them from trying. If that gets them into the hands of readers, you never know what they might actually try. But I have a viewer question from Ronald, and let's see here. When it comes to seeing clicks on your website, what are some of the best blurb tagline books descriptions that have in common?
Well, that's a tough question because it's such a variety on there. And when you're writing your blurb, I certainly wouldn't try to copy what you think is going to be the most popular blurb out there. It has to really be specific to your book. Tell a story, tell a short story. Make people excited about the book that you're writing. Don't just describe it. Just maybe describe a scene, one of the most exciting scenes in your book, without giving anything away, of course. But just get people excited, interested in it. And that's tough to do because most authors are used to writing in long form, and to write a short form, a short synopsis, it's a real skill. You just have to practice it. And I would suggest reading a lot of synopsises. And I read a ton of them. Running the book promotion sites, I see a lot of different synopsises, and some of them I'll read, and then a minute later I'll be on to the next one, and I'll forget what the other one was. And to me, that's not a good sign. However, other times I'll read one and it'll stick with me. I'll remember it, and in those cases I'll go on and buy the book myself, and add that to my reading queue.
Now, Jeff sort of brought up the concept of somebody sort of sneaking in a book that's not necessarily of the appropriate genre. Have you ever gotten complaints from books like that might have slipped through?
From subscribers, I have. Yeah, I do get those. We have a number of hardcore sci-fi fans that have subscribed for years now. Well, since we first started, they like to see the military sci-fi, the hard sci-fi. So when you get a newsletter that's you know, four of the 6 books are more YA, fantasy, shifter, romancy type books. I get emails from those folks, and they say, "Why is this in here? I don't want to see this." So to solve that problem, I try to have a lot of variety in each newsletter, and that way I can satisfy all the fans, the shifter romance fans and the hardcore sci-fi folks.
Now, if somebody does like get a not quite right for the genre book through and receives complaints or anything like that, do you sort of keep track of that author and maybe treat them unfavorably if they try to pull that stunt again in the future?
I don't really try to put anybody on the blacklist, that sort of thing. In some cases, maybe it was just an honest mistake. I don't think authors and publishers are trying to pull a fast one on us. You know, that may be the case sometimes, but generally, I think people are going to be honest. And so no, I don't try to blacklist anybody. I may send an email that says, look, you know, this is probably not a good fit for our site at this time. Maybe you could try one of our other sites. You might have a better response there.
I'm curious because you mentioned that like your military sci-fi fans might not appreciate the YA shifters. Does somebody just sign up for the whole list then, or are they segregated dependent on? Do they like check which types of sci-fi and fantasy they want to receive in emails?
No, it's just when you sign up, it's you get all of it. You get everything.
Okay.
And when I originally when I originally set up the site, I thought about segregating categories really, you know, into a lot of detail. But I personally I read cross genre, you know, primarily science fiction and fantasy. But, I don't read just apocalyptic novels. You know, also like space opera. I'll read fantasy novels, and I think a lot of readers are like that. And I think when you try to limit the list so much that somebody that says that they like just military science fiction, and that's all they get, you know, if they don't ever see anything, they'll see one of these other books and they'll think, well, you know, I might want to try that too. So I would rather see it broad. You know, when somebody signs up to the site, they get all the types of books in the science fiction and fantasy categories.
Now I think I know why you guys don't have sci-fi romance and fantasy romance on your Book Barbarian site, because I've wondered that because I write sci-fi romance with my pen name, and I thought, man, how come they don't have a sci-fi romance category? But I could see where you wouldn't want the man chest covers going to your military sci-fi guys necessarily. Do you find that on your romance read sites, I noticed you do have the sci-fi and fantasy over there, is it kind of the same thing where they just sign up for romance as a whole and then some of those get mixed in with like the contemporary and other kinds of other kinds of romance?
It's a mix there as well. Yeah, I set that site up the same way. It's a mix. So when somebody signs up, they'll get 5 books across all the categories. And we get a nice mix there too. There tends to be more contemporary romance, more erotica there, a little bit of a sci-fi romance, but.
All right. Being a mystery writer as well as a fantasy writer, I asked a little bit of a deviant question for you. Could you tell us a little about the requirements to submit a novel for consideration for bookadrenaline.com? By the way, awesome domain names.
Thank you. I tried to make those names catchy when I came up with them. And the requirements there are the same as for Red Roses and Book Barbarian. It has to be for Book of Adrenaline, it has to be a mystery or a thriller in those broad categories. 10 reviews, 10 positive reviews, a full-length novel with a professionally edited and professionally designed cover. So the requirements are the same across all the sites.
And I would imagine the same red flags exist where if it just doesn't fit or the cover is not professionally done or just looks terrible, you'd be like, eh, maybe not.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. We try to keep the quality high. Looks like it's not professionally designed and written.
Alrighty, I have another surprise. I have another viewer question from you. This one from Sarah. How long does it take for a book to be accepted on Book Barbarian? She was saying, just thinking that if your book is on KU and you apply the discount to it, does it only last for a few days?
We can generally work through submissions within 24 hours. So somebody fills a form out, we take a look at it, we review all the information they submitted, and can send an invoice out within 24 hours. Sometimes a little bit longer, but generally within 24 hours.
And then that would be, when you submit and pick a date. So you work through the submission in 24 hours, but you'd be still working for that date that you chose.
Right, exactly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and that gets back to the scheduling point that we talked about earlier on Book Barbarian. You want to allow about 2 months for scheduling your promotion.
Yeah. Right.
So you have to do a little bit of planning and make sure you keep track of it. We have a lot of folks that will forget their promotion date, and we've set up an automated email that goes out 48 hours before the promotion that says, hey, you've got to make sure it's in time for it. Because we were having a lot of people that just forgot, 2 months in advance, and so many things going on, and know that you have the promotion coming up, and you have to go in and adjust your price on Amazon and all the other websites.
Yeah, that's a useful feature. All right, so do you allow a book to be promoted more than once? I mean, presumably with a reasonable amount of downtime in between.
Sure. We can do that. There's a lot of churn on our list, and that we have new subscribers coming in and old ones dropping off. And we're constantly advertising each month, trying to get new subscribers. I like to see 3 months in between a book promotion of the same book, which means you could run 4 times a year. And we have a lot of people doing that. They'll come back, and in some cases schedule in advance the book 4 times throughout the year. And the returns in terms of sales and downloads much, provided you have that gap in between the promotions.
That's good to know. Like, I know a lot of times a promotional, like even the best promotional sites tend to have diminishing returns if you use them too often.
That is true. If you're advertising over and over again, month to month, I think certainly there's diminishing returns. But if you can spread it out and 3-4 months in between promotions, and provided the promotion site like us or one of the other ones is adding new subscribers and consistently growing each month, you didn't really see a whole lot of diminishing returns on that. I know a lot of the others.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I know a lot of the other sites will do big pushes, marketing pushes, where they'll get a lot of subscribers all at one time, and then they'll do anything for 1 or 2 years, and hopefully as it goes on. But I like to consistently advertise and consistently get new subscribers in, instead of doing just a big marketing push and then backing off. To try and grow the business over time like that, and I'm constantly reinvesting advertising revenue from authors and publishers back into the business, always trying to make it better, bigger and better.
All right, cool. That's good to know that you guys are doing that, and good to know also that maybe some sites aren't. Because I know I've definitely talked to people where and have this experience where it might have been almost a year since you advertised your book, but you still see like a really fewer down, like if it's a free one, a lot fewer downloads that second time around.
Yeah, you will see with my own books as well. I'll go back a year, or even in some cases 2 years later, and expect to at least equal the downloads that I had the first time, and that just hasn't been the case. And that's just because the list hasn't changed during that time. And I would encourage authors and publishers to go on and try the different sites, see which ones work best for them. And you can set up a little spreadsheet and on different sites on different days, and track your downloads, track your sales and downloads, and just compare and just see which one gives you the best return.
Yeah, there's another argument too for writing multiple, keep writing, having multiple new series so that you can kind of cycle through which book one that you're going to promote maybe each couple months on the different sites, so people aren't always seeing the same one over and over again.
I think that's a good strategy. If you have multiple 3-book series, and you can promote them throughout the year, you can make a full-time income doing that. And just run it on the promotion sites. You don't need to worry about Facebook ads or Amazon ads, and just run the promotion sites and have your own little business set up there.
Yeah, definitely. And it can be a lot. I mean, you can spend a lot of money, but you know, you can stack your ads and get a week's worth and still not spend nearly as much as you can dump on a boosted Facebook post over a couple days. So not that both don't have a place, but you don't have to spend a fortune.
Right. No, you can hit the top 10 sites if you're looking at doing a 99 for under $300. And if you're doing that, 4 times a year, that's $1,200, which sounds like a significant investment, but I think you'll know then whether the book is going to be a hit or not. I think if you can run $1,200 worth of promotion on the book promo sites, you'll be able to access potential readers, and you'll know if that book's going to be a hit after that. I think that's the best way to test it. If it's not a hit, then, and you have to define that, different people define a hit in different ways. That's a personal assessment. But I think if you decide that the book is a hit after running that type of promotion schedule, then you can put more money into it. You can learn about Facebook ads. You can learn about Amazon marketing services ads. You can expand that and continue growing the sales of that book. Now, on the other hand, if the book's not a hit, then maybe just kind of put it to the side. Don't spend any more money on it. Start writing your next series.
Right. I've certainly run into people who have been really disappointed with promos, and then they share their book, and there's typos in the blurb, and the cover's not very good. And so I guess it can be a bit of a check in there, like like if you don't get the result you're expecting, and you've heard that other people are doing well with that site, maybe it's a little notice to you that you might want to try a new cover if you can, or just have somebody look at your blurb and the sample pages.
Right, and I think the reviews will tell you a lot there too. If you're coming into some of these promotion sites like ours with just a minimum of 10 reviews, and you run the book for free, and say you get 2,000 to 3,000 downloads, you'll get a lot of reviews from that, and just read through the reviews, and you'll know if there's any problems with your book. Obvious things, typo, but if you're hearing things like don't like the story, boring, characters are flat, that sort of thing. Things that are really difficult to correct in the story without a complete rewrite, then you can just go on and say, well, decide and start working on your next one.
Yeah, always a good idea to just keep writing, and you never know which book is gonna kind of take off and become a hit.
Sure. A lot of it is luck. without a doubt, a lot of it is luck. But I think each book that you write, or each short story or article on your blog that you write, you're going to get better and better each time. And it should be fun for you. It should be fun. Don't approach it like a job. Approach it like a fun hobby. And then I think that comes through in your writing.
All right, great. Well, I got one more question here, and I think the guys both have one more question. So I've kind of know some authors now that they're, you know, it is their full-time job, and they're always looking for ways to more places to promote their books. And they talk about maybe starting their own newsletter, kind of like this, or, you know, something very niche specific, being like a mini book bub for that genre. Do you have any advice for authors that want to build a list up like that? It sounds like you didn't go to just the book community if you were like on IO9 and some of the sci-fi and fantasy sites out there.
Well, I think an email list is definitely something that you want to have as an author. Certainly for promoting your own books. I mean, it by far is the best thing you can have in terms of promotion. And I've tried a lot of different online, especially in affiliate marketing too. You try all kind of things to try to grow your sites, and by far having an email list is the best. That said, it's expensive. It's very expensive to build a list up. When I first started Book Barbarian, I was getting subscribers for under $1, and now it's very competitive, and that's up over $2 per subscriber. So to build a list of any significant size, you'll need at least, if it's a genre specific site, you could probably have 20,000 and have enough interest and enough return where authors and publishers want to advertise on it. So you're talking a pretty significant investment if you're looking at over $2-3 a subscriber. If you're talking about building a big site with like a mini book bub, in which case you'll need at least 100,000 subscribers if you're covering all the different genres. Even if you do just 10 genres, that's only 10,000 in each genre, which is still kind of a small list to be charging people for. A significant investment up front. As far as building a business, you have to consider that significant expense, and then as well, that's another very expensive item, and technical issues too. So yeah, it's difficult.
It does sound like you have to be prepared. It's going to take a lot of your writing time. So and it sounds like with you, this is probably your big thing that you're doing more so than the writing now.
It is. I want to get back to writing, and it seems like every time I sit down to write, I'll get a bunch of emails from authors. Oh, can you switch this promotion to this date? I need to change my cover. And I try to answer a lot of the customer service questions myself. I don't like to outsource that. I feel that's a really important aspect of running a business, and it's part of my personality to be very customer service oriented with people, and I don't want to outsource that to somebody that's not going to be like that. Yeah, I want to get it to a point where I can have an hour or two a day to do some writing, and to it, I love it. That's what I want to do. So.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I hope that you'll find the time going forward. I know we've talked to Damon from Book Funnel on here too, and he's like, yeah, I wrote a fantasy trilogy, but that was like 3 years ago. Now I'm the Book Funnel guy. So it's tough to have a business and an author career.
It is tough, and you don't realize how much time it's going to take either when you first start the business. I remember when I was doing affiliate marketing, you build a site and you update it occasionally, and you kind of don't really have to do much after that. It kind of takes care of itself. But with this type of business, where you're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of questions, a lot of issues, it takes a lot of time. Yeah, but I enjoy it. It's fun. I don't really look at it as work. I like all the people I deal with, all the authors and publishers, and the readers too. So it's a fun business.
So if you don't mind me asking, why did you split up the genres amongst 3 websites? Could you just come up with a website for each one?
Sure, I could have done it like that. I wanted to be different, though. I wanted at the time I started Book Barbarian, there were no sites focused just on science fiction and fantasy, and I felt that I could really come in and have an impact on that genre. Really make a difference for authors and publishers, and really provide some great books for readers. So it worked on a number of different levels. I think if I had gone on and done like a mini book bub with all the different genres, I would have just spread the site just too thin, so to speak. It would have been just another generic book promotion site. Barbarian, it's something unique. It's highly focused. Most sci-fi fantasy authors know about the site, and I haven't done any promotion to authors. On cable boards, nothing, no ads, nothing. It's just been word of mouth among authors and publishers. And the same thing with readers. So I do significant advertising there with the readers, but there's also a lot of word of mouth there, a lot of social media activity, people recommending the site to their friends, talking about some books that they've read on there recently, and saying to friends and family, check it out. You know, you really enjoy this site. So.
All right, and I have one final viewer question from Montgomery again. He's asking, if a book is Kindle only, are they still eligible to use your services, or do they need to be wide?
No, we accept Kindle books. That's fine. We'll do both, wide and just Kindle.
All right, and my question's sort of been covered, so I'm just gonna go with a different question here. You've got the 3 sites that covered really basically a pretty wide breadth of genre fiction. Are there any other genres that you think you're going to end up wrapping up into, say, a 4th site?
That's an interesting question, and I'm always thinking about new business opportunities. I thought about doing a horror site, but I don't think the demand is there right now. It's just not a big enough genre to be profitable. So I'm going to hold on that now. That that may change in the future, but I've got my hands full right now of three websites. So that's probably what I'm going to stick with, and hopefully maybe get some more staff here to help me out, and then get back to writing.
I feel like horror often gets slipped into sci-fi and fantasy, so we'll see if you just add it in there as a subcategory one day.
Yes, I do see a lot that could probably fit more into horror, but I'll let those slide in. Yeah.
There's a ghost. There's some magic. It's
right.
I don't know.
Right.
Bookdemons.com sounds great.
All right. Well, I think that's about all of our questions. Thank you for coming on with us tonight, Will. And why don't you, I mean, everybody knows now they can find you at Book Barbarian, but let us know if you have any projects you're working on, or remind us your fiction titles that maybe people can check out.
Sure. Bookbarbarian.com is the easy name to remember. That's the main site, and the other sites are linked to off of that as well. If you go to the requirements page, you'll see Book Adrenaline and RedRosesRomance.com. And my sites, my books, you can look me up as William Turnage on Amazon, and my books are Extermination Day and Nanoswarm, where survivors of an apocalyptic virus time travel back into the past to try to warn and save the future. And then I've got Rise of the Jinn as well, which is a paranormal fantasy about a world where teenagers are granted 3 wishes when they turn 17, and the repercussions thereof. So.
That sounds very dangerous.
Yes, it is.
Dangerous but intriguing.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
cool. Well, I will put the links to both Book Barbarian and to your books in the episode notes. This is episode 158. People can come on by marketingsff.com to get the show notes there and the links that I mentioned. So that's about it for this week's show. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and thank you, Will, for joining us.
All right. Nice to meet you, Will.
Glad
Thanks
to.
for hanging out.
Nice to meet you all, too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.